Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here. I have got Andre from Astrology Alert with us. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
I
Hi,
have been
everyone.
looking forward to it. Um, Today, we are talking about anything and everything astrology. I have been led on this journey to learn everything I can about astrology for myself and for hopefully to help anybody else who is wanting to learn. So, um, I know I've heard, and I'm sure other people have heard about your journey, about how you became an astrologer. So I won't have you go through that again, unless you want to. But
I,
uh,
I can I can talk about it for a couple of minutes. Uh, I started not through
Hi,
astrology.
Gina.
My journey began when I started meditating, and it was about 6, 7, 8 months after I started meditating that I began to think about things in a different way. Consider things I wasn't really considering up to that point, and I started to get a sense about looking into astrology, although I didn't really start until about a year plus from when I learned to meditate. And then from then on, I've been, living with astrology every single day, literally, because for some reason, and I didn't think of this at the time, I thought of it later. When I started to get into it, I didn't have any teachers for at least, I would say, 2 years or so. And by the time I learned from a couple of teachers, I had
Mhm.
already instinctively learned to measure. To me, it was a pretty obvious thing that I needed to get the ephemeris book, which showed the way where the planets were, and I learned to draw a chart without using a computer. There were no computers at the time, so the measuring part of it was natural to me, and the idea that I was looking at my natal chart, which is the chart for when I'm born. It's like a snapshot. But for some reason, who knows, I intuited that the planets then move and they make angles to those original planets. All of that was obvious. I couldn't measure, I couldn't interpret as well. That took me much longer. But
Right.
because I started to track the planets from the beginning, that's what I've always done. And it's what constantly informs me. What I notice is that a lot of people seem to
Hey,
think you learn
Sean.
astrology by reading other people's interpretations or watching videos on it. That's not bad. It's a helpful thing, but you've got to get in there and track the planets. Otherwise, it's difficult to get a feeling for the planets, including something as
Right.
fast moving as the moon. The moon is moving through the entire zodiac in less than a month. And as it's moving along, it's touching your planets at different points, and it's constantly giving you signals about what those planets mean by the way you feel, quite literally, even before
Right.
you get into some event where you'll say, oh yeah, that event, really seems to match whatever it is you're looking at. That's a more overt, obvious meaning, but the feeling is the direct experience. Like, for example, you'll read online about Mars is an aggressive, sometimes combative, irritating, hot type of energy. Well,
Yes.
when you experience a Moon Mars square, let's say in the in the month that you're in, and you feel that in yourself, or you literally might get angry, or you might experience anger around you, or you feel the sense that something is irritated, then you realize, oh, that's why people say this is the way Mars is. And so you start to build this internal encyclopedia of how planets behave. And then from there, you can really grow into the language, as opposed
Right.
to you can read, and hear other people's interpretations forever, and you'll get a somewhat decent idea. but in my opinion, it's never the same as experiencing it directly. So
Well, that's true. Hey, Earth Angel, thank you for being here, sweetie. Hi, Gina. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you, sweethearts. Um, and they also said hello to you, Andre.
hi
Uh,
everyone.
so yeah, it's like lately I've been feeling very uneasy. Um, but even though I know everything's going to be fine with everything that's going on, I know everything's going to be fine. He's going to be taken care of. I'm still feeling very uneasy. And I know it's because of everything that's going on up there.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so, and plus the fact I'm an intuitive, psychic intuitive. So I can pick up on all of this crap.
Mm.
So, um, So I do my best to ground myself and surround myself with peace and love, but I can still pick up on all this crap, and bleh. It's just horrible. Um, you just do the best with what you got, you know, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's the thing, that the situation is dicey, because if you had to explain it from astrology, the US, and in this case, probably the entire planet, because the Uranus cycle, ever since it's been discovered, Uranus, I believe, is 1780s, and that period, which was pretty close to the American Revolution, and there were other revolutions around that time. Uh, a turbulent period on planet Earth, and then after that, it settled. This is Uranus in Gemini, and then the next Uranus in Gemini cycle was the Second World War. Oh no, pardon me. The Yeah, that's correct. The Second World War, and we're at that third cycle, the third point of the Uranus being there. So there are a lot of things shifting right now, and this is not an imaginary thing, because I've heard across the years many people, in the New Age community, they will sense changes all the time because changes are always happening, but some are bigger than others. This one is really quite big, and all you have to do
yeah.
is think back. The American Revolution, people know generally, was a pretty turbulent time. I think the French Revolution followed shortly after, and so forth. And then in the Second World War, there was a lot of upheaval, followed by many years of relative prosperity. Now we're back at that point again. And the problem for the US is that on top of that, Uranus, three-time return thing, Uranus in Gemini, the other problem is that where Uranus is now, plus Neptune, so now you have two planets, two big planets out there, they're in the same location as during the American Civil War, which is why we're having a lot of this internal division at the moment. And so this means, well, what you're seeing, which is,
Yeah.
often seems completely crazy, that someone like Trump can even ascend to the presidency, a complete dimwit. Because this guy, I'm telling you, it's amazing how he will. He recently put out one of those, you know, very ironically named Truthy whatever, because it's called Truth Social. Everything he does is the opposite of what he says, and he's saying
Mm-hmm.
that he's not
Mm-hmm.
going to go to the debates, according to him, because he is of such high intelligence that there has never been a politician like him. He doesn't need to debate, in other words. In reality,
Whatever.
not. He's a complete fool. So there he is, doing all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of damage to the American institutions, to public trust in government and life and everything. And so we're having to endure it. But even so, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. This is looking pretty grim, and
Yeah.
on top of whatever he is almost certain to face, he's damaging his own party, because he can get all these MAGA people to follow him, but from there to winning a national election is a big reach, especially when you can't
Huge.
manipulate everything the way he tried in 2020. Even then, it didn't work, right? So I think that a lot of Democrats are totally freaked out because in 2016, he wins an election which was the equivalent of playing poker and getting all the cards, like a totally fluky event, which was, by the way, greatly aided by a lot of Democrats didn't vote, for Hillary. They just thought, it doesn't matter. So she got significantly less votes than Obama, which is pretty inexplicable since there were more people by then, presumably. So, anyways, he gets in
Mm.
there, and then people now think he's got some kind of magical power. But other than that, every single thing he's been involved in since then, he's lost. In 2017, in 2018, in 2019, 2021, every single election, they've been getting hurt by Trump. And the 2024 election is exactly the same. If they run him, and I'm still not convinced he gets there. I don't know if he's going to make it to the nomination, but if he makes it, it's the biggest gift to Democrats because he doesn't have the numbers.
Isn't it though?
And you hear stories
Yeah.
like there's a poll that he's tied. No way. Biden's numbers are always going to be low 50s, and his numbers never get any higher than mid 40s. It's a loser type situation. But in the meantime, yeah, it's scary because he's telling you, if I get in power, I will throw away the Constitution and install myself as a fascist, and I'll take revenge on all my enemies. That's what he's saying. So it's scary to hear it.
But we know that it's not going to happen.
No.
The ones of us who are enlightened know it's not going to happen. So, it's just through this whole thing, I'm not worried. I've never been worried.
Right. Yeah. That's the, when you say, if you feel uneasy, I mean, the solution for feeling uneasy is to do things to help yourself feel the ease, and that's always true anyway. Even if things were smooth in the world, you could still say, I'm feeling uneasy. It's still up to you to settle yourself. I even think that if all Democrats everywhere realize we've got the upper hand here, we've got the numbers, we've got the percentages. So just relax and focus. Just stay focused, vote, encourage other people to vote, let the chips fall where they may. They're not, the GOP is in a very bad place because, you could also say Trump is one thing. What about what they're trying to do to women's rights? I mean, this is the craziest period for the GOP imaginable because they're getting on the wrong side of all the issues. And women are really upset for good reason.
They're trying to make it so that we can't vote. We can't vote. We can't, we're not in charge of our bodies anymore. We can't do this. We can't do that. I don't think so.
Well, that's really unlikely to succeed. The only thing is, though, that I think where we shouldn't be fooled is that it's one thing to say that I think the Democratic Party will win the election in 2024. It's just that the other side is not going to be happy. So this insanity is likely to continue for a while. I don't think you'll see the fever break right away. It's going to take a while. It could take the rest of the decade, not to mention that the Uranus-Neptune cycles could put the US in some kind of conflict with an external power. Something could happen there that could really increase the tension. That's possible. But all I can say about that is that, because I've heard this even from astrologers, where they'll say, well, look at this Uranus return. And well, let's just focus for a second. The last two, who won? We did. So we're going to win again. Just focus that way. Don't worry about the fact that, we're in a change period. It is. It's true. It's dicey. There are all kinds of forces in the air that make it scary. But that doesn't mean that, we want to be on their side because their side is weak, and their side is going to be on the losing end. And so we have to endure. I mean, can you imagine if you lived during the Second World War, how scary that had to have been? Just look at some of the videos. It was horrible. But
I mean, my grandma did, my mom did. She remembers it, because my grandpa fought in it. My mom remembers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not. Granted, she was a little girl, but she remembers. So it wasn't fun,
Yeah, no, it wasn't fun, but it was a lot less fun for the Germans after what they tried to do then. I mean, that's
True,
the thing, right?
true.
And of course, you always pray that it doesn't get to that, and I don't think it'll get to that.
No,
But
no.
even so, things could get dicey, and who knows? Maybe it could be China, because China is now having economic problems, and when a country of that size experiences internal unrest due to economic problems, and I'm starting to read stories about that, the easiest way for a leader like that to regain his popular support is to start a conflict somewhere and say that it's all America's fault, and like if they could, maybe they try to take over Taiwan or some such thing. That could happen.
True.
It's possible.
And Earth Spirit said she's glad that, he made it so that DeSantis can't run, basically.
Who made it?
Um, uh, um, uh, Trump.
What? But why is? How is
She
he
said, I'm
keeping?
happy he's keeping DeSantis out of the presidency.
Who is Trump?
Yeah.
You mean because why? Because he's got a big lead on DeSantis? Is that the logic? Because that could change. You never know. I mean, right now, if they, according to the numbers right now, Trump is far and away the leader of the GOP, but DeSantis is still running. And I
Oh,
mean, if you go by that, you remember in 2008, at this stage of the campaign, Giuliani was in the lead, and look what happened to him. So um, we're not at the election yet. The election doesn't start until next year in terms of voting and so forth.
Oh, hey, Earth Spirit has a question. Do you think the planets are now done with 45? I feel he's being pushed out of his role of division, primal mind, fearful ego, etc. He really brought out the worst in humanity.
No, I don't think. No, the planets. I mean, the planets aren't. I don't know what you mean by done, but the planets are really hard for him, and because of the way the planets are lined up for him, he is at risk of. He's at risk of. Well, legal, you can see. I mean, he's got now 91 felonies, and the
Is
odds
that
of
what?
91. Yeah, he's got four separate trials with 91 felonies. So the odds of being in a trial and being convicted increase, but he could still run for the presidency because no matter what happens in the legal realm, he can appeal it. So there is no way to prevent him from running for president. What we don't know is whether the GOP voters come to their senses and choose someone else. We don't know that yet. We'll find out. So when you add those risks, plus he has health problems in his chart as well that could erupt at any moment. That's another major risk that he's carrying. And so,
Well, he's not looking good.
no, it's not. But the way he is unlikely to give in. Until he's at the edge of the cliff. If then would he give in? So if you're counting on him to drop out or something like that, I think you'll be waiting a long time because I don't think he'll do it. That's my feeling. But that said, I remember I was saying this last year, late last year and early this year, that first March would be the start of the switch because that's when Saturn entered Pisces. So that's very unfavorable for Trump because Trump has a Gemini sun with a Sagittarius moon. So Pisces is in a square to those two. And that's what we saw in March was when Alvin Bragg finally, he brought an actual indictment because for the longest time, people said, oh, he's got all these legal problems. There weren't any legal problems yet, but then they started. And then Saturn moved in further, but there's this other thing in his chart. There's a major progression that just took place this month. And that's why I had said earlier in the year, when we get to August, things are going to get especially rough. So now August had been these two major indictments that he's faced. And this doesn't get better, it gets worse because Saturn goes deeper into the sign, and that progression that took place in his chart was not for the better, it was for the worse, because he had a lot of help planetarily up to this point that now is basically
Right.
disappearing, right? And just by looking, I mean, you can step outside the astrology and just say, okay, well, just look at what's happening. I mean, who would think that they're in a good position under this kind of legal pressure? It's not a good scene. It's a very threatening scene to be in.
Hey, Teresa, how's it going, girl? Hugs, hugs, hugs. Um, oh, before the live, I had brought up, yeah, I'm a Gemini. Yeah, Gemini, May 30th. Did you? Yeah, I, and of course Mercury rules me.
Right.
Uh, so it's not always fun when the retrogrades come around because they last the longest. Um, Yippee.
Yeah.
But because they rule your emotions and all that. So
Mm.
at least mine, they rule mine because um, that's always fun. So um, since I was a Memorial Day baby, traditional Memorial Day baby,
Mm.
how do you see that? Um, for
Well,
since I was born at 2:30 in the afternoon.
so, well, 2:30 in the afternoon, that adds the entire chart to see where everything lands. But being in the first third of Gemini, that's where Saturn is transiting now. So
Mhm.
uh, between now and until about by next spring, the Saturn has moved beyond those degrees, so it gets easier. So right now, the people that are born in the last week of May, so May 22nd, 23rd, 24th, that last week, those Geminis are experiencing the Saturn pressure. But the thing about that is that for most people, when Saturn is there like that, it can actually be a really good thing because when Saturn brings in pressure, a person is more likely to do things that are important to them, things that they know they may need to sacrifice something to make them happen. Maybe they need to give something up or engage in some important work. It's a very useful planet that way. I even sometimes think that unless Saturn is there, you're not likely to do what you need to do. So Saturn is really useful. Where it's not useful is that in the case of someone like Trump, Saturn is also a carrier of karma, what you've been doing for anything from the start of your life, but especially the last number of years, it comes back to confront you. So in his case, what he was doing in 2016 and 2017, because that's when Saturn was in Sagittarius, right? Which is the previous pressure to Gemini. He was doing all kinds of things that now are showing up in his life as a karmic retribution, landing on him.
Mhm.
And when you think about it, it's astonishing to think that he's in a lot of trouble, mostly because of his presidency, not because of what he did before his presidency, it's what he did during his presidency. And the fact that he got into this presidency is what now has him in dire straits. So Saturn that way is a double-edged sword, but for most people, because people will say, well, you're saying Gemini, Gemini's bad, Gemini's bad. Gemini's bad if you play to the shadow side of Gemini, the way uh,
Right.
Trump and Giuliani. Giuliani's another Gemini, right? But notice that Bill
Lovely.
Barr, another Gemini, he was really corrupt during the administration. He was Trump's attorney general. Now he's found his back, although I know that he probably did because he didn't want to go to jail. He probably realized I'm not going to do this. He was on TV and he said he told Trump when he was leaving in December of 2020, he told him, if you don't stop this, this nonsense, you will never be able to, the rest of your life, you'll be entangled in legal problems. He was prophetic that way because Barr is
Oh,
an actual lawyer who knows how the law works. That he may not be an honest lawyer altogether because he's very pro GOP, that's separate. And I'm not trying to tell anyone that they should think Bill Barr is some kind of enlightened soul. But let's just say he's a lot smarter than Trump. He understands,
Mhm.
the American system has a big legal system, and it is not advisable to challenge it with this kind of insanity. It's not a good idea because there are a lot of prosecutors and lawyers who have a lot to gain by taking you down. And if you give them evidence, I mean, Trump is like an evidence machine. He keeps saying there's so much evidence of fraud, but he never presents any evidence. The prosecutors, they say there's evidence of your fraud, and we have evidence, and we're going to present it. That's a big problem, because when you go to court, you get in trouble. So Barr understood that. Anyway, all these guys are Gemini. So, I hope that there isn't someone out there thinking, well, I'm a Gemini and this means no, that's not it, right? Just be a normal, good Gemini and you're fine. Gemini is a perfectly good sign. Don't focus
Yeah.
on the crooks. Every sign has good people and bad people. There's no way to say
Oh yeah.
Aries is better than, no, it doesn't work like that. But you will in politics often see, it is common, and these years especially, way more than normal on the GOP side. There are a few Democrat politicians that are, not so good, but they're generally okay at least. And there are a lot of GOP politicians that show you the shadow of like for instance, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Capricorns. These are not good Capricorns. These are Capricorns that are thievish and they're basically dishonest, manipulative. This is not good, when you're in public service because you cause people to lose faith in the system, and that's not a good
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Y-
exactly.
it's like well, at least I'm a good Gemini, so
Yeah, well, good for you.
thank goodness. So there's a lot of us on this channel. So there, so
Mhm.
but I had the thing is Geminis Geminis are flip-sided. We have, you know, we have our two sides.
Mhm. That's a
I
dual
have
sign.
my yeah, I have my I'll do everything, I'll do anything and everything for you. I'm loyal. But you
Mhm.
tick me off, don't tick me off
Mhm. Then you
because
get
I'll
mad.
go after if you tick me off.
Yeah, and Gemini, the dual signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. They're cardinal, fixed, mutable in astrology, and the mutable. If you think about the word mutable, it's changeable. So
Hi,
the fact
Teresa.
that
Hi, hi, hi.
the changeability of mutable signs means that they are more adaptable and they're able to change with conditions and they're able to flow with conditions. But
Mm-hmm.
this idea of duality or two is also true. And so you can have two distinct personalities. And sometimes even you see when those signs are featured in the work dimension, you'll see people with two jobs or two things they're doing at the same time because of the duality of it, right? So it's both in the personality and in the life path. And it's, again, not a bad thing. The main thing to focus on is that when you have a dual nature, your ability to adapt and flow with situations improves because let's say the fixed signs, they're more likely to hold on and not be able to adapt. And the cardinal signs, they're great at acting, but they might run away from the problem, for example, and not bother to join as well as the mutable signs do, right? So it's perfectly fine. But of course, yes, if a person then says they excuse their behavior by saying, I have two personalities. I'm really happy most of the time, but then I have these horrible moods. The answer is not to say you accept that, work on the side that isn't as happy because
Right.
the whole idea isn't to say, well, I can just excuse my bad behavior by saying I'm a Gemini since I have two sides. This is not a good plan. It's the same as
No.
like if someone said, I have a lot of Mars and I just really get angry. Well, work on your anger
Work on
because
your temper.
yeah, because that's not a good thing. That doesn't help you.
No.
It doesn't help the world. So smooth it out. Like as an example, there, Mars. The logic of Mars is Mars is just an energy source, but because it's almost too energized, you can get hot, you can get irritated, but it's up to you to channel it better, to bring it into the
You
world in a better
you
way.
can have a temper, just use it wisely,
Yes,
you
yes.
know.
Hmm.
So, but if anybody in the chat has a question about their own sign
Hmm.
or question about astrology, um, you can post it in chat as Andre and I go along, and
Hmm.
Andre can answer. Because this is really cool. I love astrology. I've always been, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in astronomy and astrology.
Hmm.
I've always been uh, interested in what's out there. I've never, it's like, yeah, I'm stuck here on this planet, but I want to know what's out there. Ever since I was like a 6 or 7 year old kid, I want to know what's out there.
Hmm.
Um, I want to know about the planets. I want to know about the stars. I want to know about everything. And where I live, we went to the Johnson Space Center here in Michigan, and I couldn't get enough of it. I was like being a 7 year old kid. Oh, it's
Hmm.
just so cool. So, I wanted to go back, but we never got a chance.
Hmm.
Um, So, the Johnson Space Center is in Jackson, Michigan. It was too far away from us to drive, because we lived in Indiana at the time.
Right.
So it was just too far away. And hello, Teresa. Thank you for coming. I saw you. Um, hello, hello. But it's just the idea of how the stars were made and how they formed themselves to make those the constellations. They just happen to form themselves into the constellations.
Hmm.
It's like you stop and think about it. It's like it's wonderful, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's uh, the the notion that, well, I mean, science knows this now, that everything is created by the stars.
This
Uh,
is true.
there's a question there: would an astrology chart
Yep.
be any good if I don't know my birth time? Um, yes, in that it depends with what astrologer is doing it. I do it. I've done astrology long enough that even just from the day positions, I can get plenty of information, particularly when I know what you're trying to do and by when, which I use even if I have your birth time. I'll ask those questions because when you look at a chart, the most important thing is to figure out where are you, where do you want to go. And so what happens when you don't know the time is you don't know what was rising, setting, culminating. You just know where they were, all the positions for that day. And you also don't know exactly where the moon was. You just know a range. But bottom line, you can get great information without the time. The time is better because without the time, certain things become unknown. Like in the case of Trump, when I said earlier that I knew things were going to become really dicey in August, you need a really exact time for that to know that particular factor. But the one that
Mhm.
I said in March, that you don't need the time for. And so, then you can say, well, things started to get rough in March and they just got worse later. Pfft, big deal. It's the same thing. You're adding a little more precision in there by saying August is a particularly difficult month because you happen to have the birth time, right? So, anyway, that's a long answer, but that's how that works. Um,
Yeah,
around
it's and what was I gonna say? I had it in my head and then it just went. Um I had it in my head, and then it went completely out of my head. I'll think of it as we talk. It it happens to the best of us, doesn't it, Andre?
If it's important, it'll
Um,
come back, right?
yep, that's true. Um, and actually, that was a really good question, Teresa. Um, but she said thank you.
Ah, no, pleasure. That's what
But
I like doing, is answering astrology questions, and that comes up quite a bit. But I'll often do in my channel. I've done just day charts for politicians because a lot of them you don't know the time. There are quite a few that you do, and almost as many they're unknown. Like for instance, I don't know the time for the Texas governor Greg Abbott. I don't know the time for Matt Gaetz. I don't know the time for Marjorie Taylor Greene. There are quite a number of people, but even without a time, to give you an example, you can see why Marjorie Taylor Greene has had a rough time of it in 2023 because she's under a lot of Saturn. So she's had pushback from the Democrats and from the Republicans because she's so extreme. She's had problems with everybody because of the way Saturn tends to work with people like her. Saturn, you can almost predict if a person has weak discipline, it tends to be rough on them. That is something you would know for her without a birth time because the change with a birth time isn't enough, to make any difference. Yeah,
that's
Donald Trump's real time. No, that's actually not true. Some people say that, but uh, the story on that is that Trump got into a conflict with Bill Maher, who is a comedian, um, political commentator, and
yeah.
he really dislikes Trump, and he insulted Trump really gravely, something about his mother and an orangutan, a really awful thing. And then Trump, they had like a bet going because Maher said something about, I'll give you this much money. So then it was to do with the fact that, if you recall, Trump began his political career by attacking Obama for having no birth certificate, which was a total lie, typical Trump garbage. And then Bill Maher said, well, why don't you show your birth certificate? Which he did. He put it online. And it's the one thing, if you look at, there are 2 or 3 documents that I found, and it's crystal clear. It says there 10:54 a.m., June 14th, 1946. And now then some people will say, well, that's fake because everything Trump does is fake. I see no reason to think that based on the fact that I followed his chart carefully for years now, the last 8 years, and it vibrates properly to that birth time, which is a very, very late Leo rising.
Oh, did you see it?
But the time readers were using was like 1 hour off. I don't know what readers those were. I've never used the wrong time.
Or something, but your time was right.
Well, I think so. I've been told all kinds of stories about people have rectified it and this and that, and I'm not buying it. I've followed his chart carefully for years and years. I think his time is correct. And by the way, I don't think Trump is smart enough to think of why giving you the wrong birth time would mean anything. I don't think Trump, I said earlier, I think Trump is a dimwit. So don't try to convince me that he's some kind of brilliant light bulb. That's what he says. Trump says a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that he is those things. He just says them, which
I
is,
mean, what would be the point of giving a incorrect birth time? I
there wouldn't be
mean,
any. No, there wouldn't be any.
exactly.
There wouldn't be any. And you can see the document. You can see it's an official New York State document, and there is zero reason to put in a time in there, to create a fake document. Zero. And then it's not the only one. There are 2 versions of it that that are saying the same thing. So again, that's what the documents say. I've tested it by tracking his events as they're happening. Do they connect to that 10:54 a.m.? They do. So I'm satisfied that it's the correct time. And normally when you have someone's birth certificate, that 99 times out of 100, that is the correct time. I think when you start to doubt such a thing, now you're getting enmeshed in, unnecessary controversy, in my opinion. I'm sure there will be someone, or maybe more than one, where the certificate is wrong, but most of the time, it's correct.
Yeah, yeah, Gina, you're right. Dim-wit light bulb.
Yeah, although the light bulb is extra, just stop it, dimwit.
True, true,
Or like
very.
dimwit idiot, dimwit imbecile. I mean, honestly, uh, to anyone who doubts how much of a dimwit he is, just remember what he did in the spring of 2020 when on camera, he was suggesting that we should all use disinfectants to get rid of COVID. That has got to be the most embarrassing, unbelievably moronic thing to say. And he was really embarrassed himself too, because after that he didn't take those press conferences anymore. Even he knew that he had done something really awful. But how a person
Yeah.
says things like that, I mean, you can almost picture him in the back room. He saw someone cleaning the table and he projected in his mind, well, wouldn't it be great if you could take this, virus killing whatever and put it inside the body? Well, it doesn't work like that. I mean, of course, if we all took, take a bottle of bleach and just drink it straight, you'll kill COVID. You also kill yourself. And by the way,
Yeah.
I don't know if people knew this. There were MAGA supporters that drank disinfectants on his advice back then that got
Oh,
themselves
that's
really
right.
sick. I mean, this is the thing. When you have a country with 350 million people, there'll be all kinds. And this is the other thing. Who follows this guy? A lot of fools. There are a lot of people just tune into the TV, watch someone ask a question of a Trump supporter, and listen to what they say. And you will think, wow, this person doesn't seem very smart. He's followed by a lot of people that, have a hard time understanding what's going on around them. Because once again, who would hear advice like that and actually act on it? I'm just going to go and buy myself some bleach because that'll protect me from COVID. No, I mean, that's not how it works, right? It's
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. It's like the people that, those young kids that were going around and doing that TikTok thing where they were licking the toilet seats and then they ended up getting COVID.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean,
I'm like, a lot of those kids their parents were Trump supporters,
yeah,
apparently, supposedly. So I'm like, well, okay. I'm like, if you're gonna lick a public toilet seat,
mhm.
of course you're gonna get COVID.
Yeah. Well, or you'll get something else. I mean, it's just not a good plan, to do things
Yeah,
like that. So that's the logic. That's
yeah,
one of many. By
yeah.
the way, it's only one of many, many, many things. Uh, he, he's not a smart person. If he had dealt with COVID properly, like a normal human being, he probably would have been reelected. Or think about the situation he's in. Everything he's in for now is because of what he did after he lost. If he had just lost, walked away, and done things in a legal, decent way, he would have a shot now. He would be a dangerous opponent to Biden because he could come back and say whatever. He could say anything, minus first keeping nuclear secrets at his Mar-a-Lago resort, which is against the law, and minus trying to do an insurrection, which is also against the law. Those are big
Mm-hmm.
problems after his presidency, right? So, to my mind, this is the mark of a very stupid person who doesn't understand the world that he lives in. He thinks he does. It's worked for him for many years in a certain range, but he's no light bulb. By the way, who do you know who has bankrupted more than one casino? It is hard to bankrupt a casino because the casino always wins. All you have to do is make sure you pay your bills, set it up in a normal way, and you'll make money. He found a way to bankrupt that. And yet he's convinced all these Americans that he's this really smart guy, the second coming of whatever. He's an idiot. It's simple. That's what it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to know if they're ever going to get back the bust of Lincoln because he took that. And the bust of Lincoln belongs in the White House.
Yeah, that I don't know. Do you have a feeling for that? I have no idea. But I mean, I would say, the way this is going, uh, probably at some point, probably. The thing with these things, with these things that happen in the political realm is people get impatient, and you often have to wait years for it to play out. Before you see, like by the time they get the
Yeah.
Lincoln bust back, people go, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever," because the other stuff is so much bigger. They'll think, "Oh yeah, that's that other thing," that we finally got back.
Yeah, it's a little thing. And I agree with you. I get the feeling that it won't be back in the White House until way after Biden's gone.
That's possible. Sure,
It
I could
it
agree with
it,
that.
it won't be in the White House until like maybe two or three presidents down the line, possibly.
Yeah.
Um, but it it wasn't his to take.
Hmm. No.
It belongs in the White House.
Hmm.
Um, yes, it's a little thing,
Hmm.
but it's still important.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, that like many things. I mean, right now, the more important thing is they need to get all the documents back because I'm not convinced he doesn't have more
Hi,
documents.
Sylvia. Sorry,
Oh, no problem.
because Sylvia's in the house now. We got Sylvia. We got Tarot Ask Backwards. Um, see, we got some. Let's see, Teresa, TK. We got all these good people. Um, oh, she's Tarot said, I wonder how it got messed up. Then I have mine from when he what got what? Your COVID from when I was what? I wonder how it got so messed up. Then I have mine from when I was born in France. Oh, your birth certificate.
Hmm. Yeah, you'll have to figure that out depending on what it says on there.
Oh, yeah. That's back when we were talking about the birth certificate. Oop. Hey. Deepak Chopra said Trump was stuck in his tower ego and has never risen above that.
That's correct. Deepak is
True.
correct.
And Taro said, I think COVID was created in a lab. Its origins are still unknown.
Yes, that's also true. It's possible. Could have been in a lab, or it's possible that it might not have been in a lab. Either way, though, it was a very difficult time for a lot of people, in the world. The astrology was not easy in 2020. It was a very difficult period. There were a lot of planets clustered in one place, and that's usually hard for the
Yeah,
world.
extremely. Well,
Yeah.
I was happy being at home because I'm used to being at home
Mm-hmm.
because I'm disabled and I can't really go out much.
Mm.
So being in really didn't bother me.
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I found that with COVID, I remember that because I couldn't go out, my ability to focus improved. So it was
right.
sometimes I needed to do something challenging and I would put it off, but then I had more time, or really I had the same time. It's just that I couldn't go out. So then I learned to focus and I found it useful.
Oh, it says Sylvia said, however, it was created, it still happened. Thankfully, we are getting into an you mean epidemic level. We're just in an epidemic level now, not a pandemic.
Yeah, it's still around, but it also
Yeah.
isn't as it's not as intense because these pandemics, the way they tend to work is that they start out with a virus that is very intensely lethal, and then as they mutate, it becomes more infectious but less powerful. That's how the virus can survive, because being too powerful is not in its best interest. It'll kill more people, but it'll die off sooner. By being more infectious, you can infect more people and continue to live. So viruses show
True.
you the power evolution, but it's not as powerful as it used to be in the first year and a half. It was much, much harder on the system.
True. That's true. Taro said, why did we lose so many people in 22 with the shift? Is that why the energy shifts?
Lose so many people? Do you mean in COVID? If
That's
it's
what I was wondering. Are you talking about? Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Sylvia. You're very welcome. Um, were you talking about COVID, Taro? Um, because, hmm,
I think the majority of the people, I think we lost more people in 21 and in 20. By 22, I think there were some people, but less. It was that by then it was a lot of the red states, because they didn't want to take the vaccines. So that there were all kinds of data pointing to more deaths in the red states because of COVID. But more people lost their life in 20
oh,
and 21. I think that's what I remember.
he said, yes, that's what I mean. Is from, yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, so those planets, they were very close together in 2020, a little less in 21, a little less in 22. Now, Pluto is still in Capricorn, about to enter Aquarius. Saturn has moved all the way to Pisces, and Jupiter's in Taurus. They're pretty far apart now, so it's no longer a thing. But when they were together, that was a problem for the world.
True. Oh, here's another question from Taro. Said not just COVID, but are there people who cannot ascend?
That I don't know. I can't comment on that. Uh, it's not something I know anything about. Who's ascending or who's not ascending? Yeah. So if someone
Well,
has the
I
knowledge,
think that would be me. Something I
mhm,
would be. I mean, if they're not open, Taro, if they're not open, like we're open,
mhm,
um, then if you're talking about ascension as to what we know ascension as, then then no, they won't ascend if they're not open to it.
mhm,
Um, if they're, you have to be open in order to say, hey, I'm open to it. Let me just grow. Just
right.
so I think if that's what you're meaning, um, yeah, the nodule shift or the nodal shift. Oh, is the nodal shift good for us?
Mm. The nodal shift, people make a lot of out of the nodal shifts, and I'm skeptical of the nodal shift being super important. It does have some correlation in your chart, by because what happens with the nodes is you get two signs that become more emphasized for about a year and a half, and then you go on to the next two signs. And so as a result, you get more energy in that part of the chart, but nothing that I can't explain with other planets. So I've never been a fan of using the nodes, too much, because they're not reliable that way to point to things, in too much of a clear way. So I would not make too big a deal out of that. Right now they're in Aries and Libra, and it is interesting that the nodal axis in the sky cuts across the U.S. house of where elections are found. But curiously, it's also the same house is where you get children. So it's reproductive rights. That's why you could, uh, you can already know that this is going to be the case, that women's rights and reproductive rights will be a big part of the upcoming election, because the nodal the Libra Aries nodal positions will still be there in November of 24. So this, in a way, reflects the fact that it'll be litigated and argued about and so forth. But there are other things that are even more important that are going on, that point in the same direction. So long answer to say, don't worry too much about the nodes.
Okay, because they say I get energies from the 900s based on what I read from history and other astrologers.
What is the 900s? What is that?
Trining and all that.
Trining? I'm not sure
Did
what
you
you mean.
Did you mean another word, or did you mean trining?
Well,
Tarot.
trining is planets that are in 120 and trine to each other, but I'm not sure about 900s, unless you mean the ninth harmonic. That's what a trine. Trines are in the third harmonic, but they're connected to 9. 3, 6, 9 are connected to each other, that series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that yet. Thank you. Okay, Sylvia has a question. Oh, how much longer are you able to stay?
I can stay a few more minutes before
Okay.
My dinner time is coming up, but I can still stay a few more minutes.
Okay.
So let's see.
Okay.
Is there a planet where we go from being gaslighted to being able to see the? Yeah. Well, so the gaslighting energy, that's the shadowy manifestation of Neptune. Like Neptune entered Pisces in 2011, and the upside of Neptune being in Pisces for all these years, it's still there, is that there is so much more information than there used to be in places like YouTube, any kind of medium where you create a recording or a film or a projection like this. This is what we're doing here has strong Neptune overtones. That would be, I think, more on the positive side because you can learn new things by uh, looking at a film or a video or a recording. But the downside, the shadowy side of Neptune is disinformation or lies, made up things, conspiracies. So gaslighting is exactly that. Gaslighting is someone saying to you, what you're seeing is not what is true, even though you're seeing it with your eyes. Like, I mean, think about being told by the Republican Party that January 6th was a tourist visit. And I mean, all you have to do is we were watching and we were seeing, men attacking policemen with flags and causing grave damage. So that is being gaslit. It's being told, oh, that's not what you saw. No, I saw what I saw. So what I saw is what I saw. So there you would guess, pretty strongly when Neptune gets out of Pisces, which it will in 2025, but really not till 2026. That's when it finally exits completely. You should see an ebbing, probably because people just get tired of the, continuous thing. Or maybe one of the good things that might come out of this Trump era is that society will become more fond of being truthful because he spent so many years lying, and making lying normal, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing because if everybody starts to believe in lies, the entire fabric of our society falls apart, gets torn. It's a bad thing. So yeah. So anyways, long story. That's the Neptune cycle. It needs to move, get out of Pisces and get into Aries for that to.
And like Tarot said, the internet is run by Neptune, but I think
in part, it's a combination of Uranus and Neptune. Uranus is the Uranus is electricity. None of this happens without electricity. But the medium, the projection on a screen, that's Neptune. So the two of them together create this illusion, that is very interesting and helpful on one level. But if you then say, well, yeah, but isn't that where I saw a video, by the Proud Boys, that's the downside.
very
Thing,
down.
right?
And then
solar
flares hit, and then everything goes.
Yeah, it can. Although it's pretty solid, though. I mean, we've had some interruptions, but the internet has been pretty solid, for a long time, long time.
That's true. But I know you want to leave to go eat. So, I I will let you go eat. So I will say thank you for coming. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. Pleasure, everyone.
Thank you. Um, um, thank you so much for coming. I really, you have been so, so knowledgeable, and you have taught me quite a bit, actually.
Oh,
And you are more than welcome to come back.
thank you.
And thank you everybody for coming. Sylvia, Taro, Gina, Teresa, both Teresas. Thank you everybody for supporting. Without you being here, we wouldn't be here. So thank you so much. We love you all. See you next time. I will be on a show with Sherry and Sharon tomorrow, and I will be on a show with Val and David on Sunday. So I will see you then. Oh, and what about you, Andre? Anything coming up?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm doing a show with Linda. I haven't spoken with her in the last 10 days or so, but we're doing a show tomorrow where we'll be talking about, whatever. We always have something we've been looking at, and mostly the political situation and so forth. That's tomorrow. So
Okay.
all
We
right.
will see you tomorrow. All right.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Love you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.